Steve, we had some technical difficulties on my side as I forgot that we were actually have to be on the Zoom together to record the podcast. So good to see you. Happy
Good to
be
see you.
here.
Glad you're back.
Yeah.
Glad back. Back before it starts.
Never a dull moment with us. How are you, Steve? You good? You doing good?
I am wonderful.
Great.
How about you? Wait, how about you?
I'm great. I'm great.
Okay.
I'm in a good mood. I'm getting to chat with you. This is my favorite hour of the week. So
There we go.
this is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve.
Steve, we've got a lot of things to talk about today. There's a lot of Penn State news, some Penn State media news going on today, some stadium changes, maybe some role changes. The NFL draft is this weekend. And then you are very fired up about this week's Old Guy, Young Guy. So I'm excited for.
Yeah, and I did some benchmarking. Some people that I thought were on my side are not. So we'll see how this goes.
All right. Where to begin? Okay, let's begin here with the most recent news from our friend of the podcast, Corey Geiger. Corey, late last night, as I was falling asleep, kind of broke some bigger news in the Penn State world, if you pay attention to this type of thing. Dean DeVore, who has been the public address announcer at Penn State for football since I believe 2002 or 2000, is no longer going to be the public address announcer for Penn State football. Whether that includes the Blue Band and some other stuff is yet to be seen. But I think we'll start there. We did reach out to Dean and asked if he had a comment or wanted to join the podcast, and he declined. So we'll cover our bases there. I think ultimately this is for those that are kind of paying attention to Penn State, I think would be the best way to say it. This doesn't necessarily come to as a surprise. I think a lot has been put, maybe even in the later part of the season with Pat Kraft, on kind of changing the game day experience. We've noticed some things change. Guido D'Ella, who founded the Whiteout, really is a big reason for the greatest show on earth, or greatest show in college sports, or whatever the slogan is. That's how well the slogan stuck with me. His back, and I think wants to, change up some things. I think for those not in the know, this probably might be a surprising news, and for probably the majority, they'll just show up and there'll be a different guy talking at the football games next year.
Yeah, if some of those people even notice, right? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some fans who've been at games for years or go to them, and they're going to go in, and it's going to be a quarter or so till they look to their spouse or whoever they come to games with and say, "Does that sound different to you? Is that a different person?" I mean, it's not world-ending news for people, but it's interesting news. It's something in terms of Penn State football that hasn't changed for 2+ decades, and more that he's been involved with the athletic department in some way. So it's newsworthy that way. And I think Penn State's game day experience at football, whether it's the presentation, whether it's the public address announcer, I'm sure there were people in the stands every week saying, "Okay, that's interesting," right? I mean, whether they were critical or just thought that's clumsy, clunky, whatever. I always thought the game day experience, aside from the public address announcer, it took them like 2 games to figure it out every year, which I never quite understood, because it's the same thing, rinse and repeat. But I can also understand why people would say, "Why did that happen? Why am I hearing that now from the person who's the public address announcer in the stadium," or those kinds of things. And so, yeah, I feel for Dean, because I'm sure this is part of his identity. You do this for 30 years. This is who you are, right? So, and it's seemingly, from where we're at, an unceremonious departure, unexpected departure, and that's never a good thing. So I feel for him that way. But I do, I think come September 2nd, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people. There will be some people saying, "Oh, is this different? That sounds different," because it's just not on their radar up here for those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, like I said, I think this was trending that way necessarily. I think this had kind of been in the wind and floating around on some of the deeper rumors out there that they might be looking at that position and looking at making a change there. So if you were kind of in the know and maybe read a couple message boards here or there and paid attention, you would not necessarily be surprised by this news. I think you get to a point where sometimes you just need to change things up. And I think it's funny reading the message boards today and reading a lot of the comments is a lot of people thought that Dean was responsible for the music. He's not, was not, he's just responsible for. So I think he kind of became the scapegoat for the game day presentation in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I definitely think there were times that, he could improve, or even the game day experience could really improve. And I think that's what we're going to see. I wonder, what's next. Like, I don't know if it matters to an average fan. We are we are not the average fan that's certainly in the sports media standpoint that maybe pays attention. We pay attention. You and I pay attention to the pregame and in-game presentation a lot more maybe than most, or I guess we're more critical, not necessarily paying attention. So I don't know. I ready for something new. I think in general, this is what we're getting out of this administration and kind of athletic department these days is we're ready for a new era of Penn State sports, a new feel to Penn State sports. I think maybe louder, more aggressive, things like that. I'm excited to see where it goes. It's also going to be interesting to see who they pick next. I think there's probably 4 names. I tweeted this out earlier, 4 names that come to my mind. The first would be friend of the show, Brian Tripp. But I don't think Tripp wants it, and that's not any inside information. I just don't think he wants it.
He's got a better gig already.
He's got a lot of other stuff going on, and I think
better
he
gigs.
Yeah. He also probably has too many gigs. No, we love him. He does a great job. So I think then my attention probably goes down to 3 people. Jeff Brown, who does the BJC announcing for most of the men's games and some of the women's games, I think, right?
I think that's happening.
And then you've got Joe Putnam, who works with the Spikes. I think he was the public address announcer. Maybe he does radio now. He's definitely some point the public address announcer at Medler. And then you've got Rodney Martin, who is the Pagula public address announcer. Probably would be my pick. No offense to the other 2. I think the other 2 are equally as great. Rodney just gets me fired up. His we are. There's something about his we are's that are very succinct and just like if you were recording a we are chant, I would go to Rodney first to record his we are chant.
Well, if it ends up with any of those 3, I think that's a good thing. My concern with the change, and I'll go 2 places. Like the change is, I think, good. If you're going to say, hey, we are a top 5 program, we're going to change some things in our presentation, we're going to be better than we've been before, because there have been holes, there have been inconsistencies, I don't even remember the game, and I guess I should because it was so good, but there was a pregame hype video that was Avengers based about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was just awesome. But that happened for 1 game in 7, right? And I get the work behind it to even make even one of those possible. But if you're going to be here for one of your games and the others are just kind of here, you need to find like a level of consistent excellence, I guess, in terms of that. And they're paying, the product's worth a lot more now. It's a higher, it's not pull up your car on Saturday, we're going to trot out the best kids we have. These are well-compensated NIL student athletes, if they are still student athletes, participating in a multi-million-dollar industry and effort. So the presentation matters that way. But they did some things with women's basketball. Specifically, I was at the Pink Zone game this year, and they had a public address announcer there that I think they're helping out for the day, or Jeff couldn't be there or whatever. And they mispronounced the Penn State women's players' names. They did a cool new presentation and it was wonderful, and we were going to be younger. And I think you got to get your players' names right. So I'm hopeful that it's not that far afield when they go to whatever they do next.
Well, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why you look to somebody that's a little more internal and familiar. I don't think also you don't have to go for it. Like, don't, as we sit here and say, don't really pay attention to it, but I don't think it needs to be a whole thing. Like, I think you have 3 very viable options right there. And I'm sure there might be some other names who we're excluding, not necessarily on purpose. And so, yeah, I do agree with you on the and this can kind of segue into our next segment, but I think the Penn State game day experience is changing. I think it's always been a presentation. It's always been a show, in my opinion. I think maybe the last 5 years of the show haven't been as good, and sometimes you need to Grey's Anatomy has to go get a couple celebrities or whatever to shake things up. Like, go get something to shake things up, and whether that's Guido coming back, a new PA announcer, like I'm excited for that to change. What would you change if you had overarching powers of Penn State game day experience? What would you change, Steve? He's
I
bursting at
would
the seams.
I would change the thing that many people probably like the most.
Oh
And
boy.
and again, it didn't happen when I was a student, so it was new to me. I mean, they've been doing it forever. I am not a fan of, in terms of presentation, I am a fan of everything that happens from hype video to traditional band marching out on the field to forming the line for the players to run through. And then if you can skip a few minutes there, I'm a fan of a team walking out and the new branded hallways they have and the camera watching them walk out. I'm even okay with Coach Franklin arm in arm with the players, even though I'm just not a fan of, are you ready for Penn State football? Like with that guy,
Wow.
I know, I
Wow.
know. I'm
I
ready.
am
I am
speechless.
I am ready when they are lined up to let me get the fans, get the team out there and go. I am not a fan of Mike Man dude doing that because it didn't happen when I was a student. Like, we didn't do that. There wasn't an "Are you ready for Penn State football?" There wasn't that space in there.
Is it the Mike Man, or is it the song? And is it not because that's a lot of people want the old rock and roll back. I could care less. I still
think
like the
it's
old
the
one.
lull. Like, I think as I'm going to the game, right, here's the pregame video, all that stuff. I'm here and I'm ready to go. And I'm also here ready to go when the team's coming out on the field. This space in between where they're killing like 2.5 minutes just because that's what they've got
Tradition.
scheduled for it. I feel like that you could take that 2.5 minutes out and do something else.
Okay.
But I don't know what.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Number one example of that coming to mind that I thought was really impressively well done is at Michigan. As much as it pains me to say that, I do think they have probably the best entry in probably all of the Big Ten. Maybe not in the country. Definitely not in the country. Outside of Penn State. Number 1.5 in the Big Ten. And they have a hype video that, of course, just exudes Michigan man presence, and it's narrated by James Earl Jones, which again, he's a Michigan alum. I guess you're gonna get Keegan Michael Key. I don't know who you're gonna get to narrate that one, but they time it so that that hype video, the last shot of that hype video, looks like a cinematic shot of Michigan running out onto the field, and it's like a boom boom, and then they're out on the field, and it's
Right, like
very
that,
cool.
right, like that's the gap I'd like to avoid. Like, I'd like to have the excitement and then go into the team. Pitt 20, 30 years ago when I was covering Pitt had this really junky animation of like flying over the city, over Pitt Stadium, in through like the team gate, and then it went to a live camera shot and you're walking backwards, the team came to the field. That was pretty cool for a team that struggled on the field. Alabama down there a decade ago, it was a narration, it was a video, it was all Bear Bryant's voice, right? Over clips old and new. And that's what they did. That was pretty cool. So I think that stuff pregame, and then even though you didn't ask consistently, if you're gonna do stuff like third down, you're gonna play the Jaws song on third down and zoom in and out on the third down marker. In my opinion, you have to do that on every third down during the game to get your fans consistently built into it, not just when it's a big moment or a big game. And that's the one thing Penn State hasn't done. They do some really cool stuff well. They don't do it all the time consistently. And I think that's why Penn State fans sometimes don't know where to jump in, because it hasn't been the same.
I was thinking about, as much as I hate it, what's the one thing you think about with Rutgers? It's the most, like, it is the thing that I think the most about Rutgers is the that one, and then they do the hand thing, and then they say some words about Penn State in there, and that, as much as it's annoying, it's kind of nice that you've got something, and I agree with, I get what you're getting at. There, they tend to do that more on offense, and like they're more consistent on offense, I've noticed, with certain songs and things.
Yep.
usually if there's 2 first downs in a row, then you start to hear Seven Nations Army. And I think it's on 3rd down, there is the Gladiator song. But I forget what exactly that song is. But yeah, wow, Steve hates rock, or Are You Ready for Penn State Football? No.
I don't think I hate it. I just think
He hates
that
it. Nope, that's what he
there's a
said.
little lull there that could be more exciting for people. But some people get behind that. Like they like the back and forth thing.
Okay. All right. I don't think that's going away. People would be people would hate you.
I don't think they are. I don't think it's going away either, because it's a thing that Penn State does now, but it feels like there's a drop off. Like if I were producing it, you're building this to the crescendo, and the crescendo is the team coming out of the field. It feels like it drops off there, and then you got to pull them back up again.
Okay. Would you be okay if they reverse the order? Essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Do that, then do the hype video, then pull the team on the field.
Okay. All as one. Okay. Yeah, there is there. No, there is now I'm thinking about it. There is like a solid lull there. Okay. You want my thing?
Yes, I do.
All right, here's what I want. I want the stadium lights thing. Have you seen this? You've seen this at the other schools, right? I know you don't like it.
It's coming.
You don't like
it. It's coming. It's got to be coming.
I was told that it's very expensive to do. It's not cheap.
Well, they're going to do the cheap one first with the phones, right? Which way they've done, right?
No, but that one's stupid. I want the full stadium touchdown celebration light thing.
I think in the next few years you'll have it.
Okay.
I mean, I just think that's the way it's going, right? Like that's what people are going to expect. They've been to other places, they've seen it.
If Maryland is doing it or Rutgers is doing it, Penn State can do it.
Well, but here's the thing: is Penn State are they a blue blood or more blue blood program and do not need to do that?
I think,
is that what you do?
I think Alabama does it.
Okay, I'm just asking. Purdue does it too, but Purdue's Purdue.
Yeah, but they had a really good environment there. I think that slid up on my list. Like in a meaningful game there, that was a top 5 Big Ten environment for me.
Nice. Wow.
Probably solidly at 5.
Okay.
You want me to go through it real quick?
I'm going to go through it. We got
All right. Penn State 1, Ohio State 2. A meaningful game at Spartan Stadium.
The little brother ahead of the big brother?
Oh my God, yeah. I hate the big house. There's no experience. There's no feel. The big house is cool because it's very like Norman Rockwell college football experience. That's to me
Norman Rockwell with money. I mean, because there's no advertisers inside, right? The only thing they're selling in there is Michigan football, which
it's a beautiful fall day, and you're gonna go enjoy a football game. The Wolverines are on the gridiron. 4 would be Nebraska. Actually, no, let me rephrase that. 3 would be Wisconsin, 4 would be Nebraska, 5 would be Purdue on a good game. Yeah.
So Michigan State just fell from 3 to 6.
It depends if Michigan State has a meaningful game. Michigan State's got it kind of figured out because they've got a small enough stadium that it's very intimate in there. You feel uncomfortable. Oh, I'm forgetting about Iowa.
I love it when you rank stuff because we start moving the thing around. If we ever get graphics, you're going to need a touch screen to move this stuff around. You can't have Iowa up there because you don't like those people. They were mean.
They are really rude. Yeah. It's loud. It's the second loudest, but they're not in terms of game day experience. They are toward the bottom.
And I don't think you can be that mean and cheer the kids. I just don't think you can beat both.
Steve is feisty today.
You're putting words in my mouth.
All right. I think we've got 2 more stadium or 1 more Penn State thing to get to. Okay. The other thing that's changing that I think I'm probably going to write about this going into everything else. It seems like within the next week or so, we're going to find out what's going to happen next with Beaver Stadium. It seems like the study is done, according to Blue White Illustrated's Nate Bauer. Basically, there's going to be a renovation that could be $700 million. Let me find you the key paragraph. The project will primarily focus on the west side of the stadium, including a complete demolition of the current stands in the press box. In its place, the proposal is for a rebuild with new stands, including expanding chairback seating on its lower level, as well as luxury amenities, suites, suites in LOGE boxes, Loge boxes,
Loge, yep.
Loge boxes.
Got English class going on too. This is
Thank
great.
you. This is great. Additionally, space for press seating and media amenities will be included. I think that for a lot of people is the biggest news. They're also expanding the concourses. Let me read the tea leaves here. I think we're gonna see 2 tiers of stadium on the west side. I feel like that's kind of what I'm picking up what they're putting down. Interested to see how this impacts, because they're probably going to have to do this during the course of at least one season. So how does that impact season ticket holders, particularly ones that sit on the edge of the western side? At me. Hopefully I'm an NB. Hopefully I don't get pushed. But I'm interested to see how that all shakes out. I wonder when they're going to start it. It would be weird for them to do it in 2024, but maybe you get it done sooner rather than later, so that in case a college football playoff home game does come, you have it done for them then. Those are kind of my collective thoughts on it. We knew it was coming.
Yeah, the timeline thing is the scariest, right? I mean, it's doesn't sound like a one construction season kind of thing, right? I mean, it's two seats, feels like it's 2 off seasons, which is doable and not a problem. But 2024 sounds ambitious to be done. Like, I just think, I mean, even if they present their stuff to the board of trustees, then they've got to I did this with my class in the fall. Like my class in the fall was half the class had to present a renovation and half of the class had to present a brand new stadium. So, I mean, they go from this, they got to get bid approval. They got to get some numbers. Then they got to hire. Yeah. Like, it's just that timing's probably too quick. Maybe it's 2 tiers. Maybe there's some separation, right? That at the current walkway that's there or something. That's what they have architects for. But it sounds like it's, Pat Kraft said they have all the studies done when he came in. We're not doing another study. This thing's been studied and studied and studied. And this does sound like picking the pieces of the studies they've done before and said, okay, yes, we need some amenities for people down low. We need some premium seating. We need to fix the west side and the press box. And they picked the right parts without having to do the work again that they've already done in terms of surveying the place. So I think it's exciting. I think it's changed not for change's sake. It's changed for something that'll improve the game day atmosphere, the game day presentation, people's willingness to go to the stadium, which is an important thing. That's their job now. They've got to make sure they've got butts in seats. They've got TV money, but you want to get both revenue streams. You don't ever want to have low attendance numbers or people not showing up. So this will make it special for some places. They'll be able to sell those seats, those boxes, and it sounds like the right thing. So I think it's got to be exciting for people.
The other thing that I'm just sitting here thinking about, what about parking? Where do the highest donors park, Steve?
I don't know. Behind the scoreboard? I don't know. Or
behind the scoreboard or behind the press box side. Right. So that's going to be interesting as well. Can't wait for that. I'm fine with it. I think let me stick my old guy hat on and stick my 10-pole flagpole into. I really hope that 107,000 doesn't go away, even if they don't get that for every game. I think that's really the only thing that I'm concerned about. But it's time to make the stadium better. It's falling apart. It's just falling apart.
Yeah, and I think it would be hard for 107 not to go away if they're going to have some premium seating and do some stuff. I think you can still be at 102 maybe or something like that, because the number matters a little, but they've got a lot of wiggle room. I don't know what Tennessee is. You've got a decent amount of wiggle room.
It's not much.
Still be a top 5 stadium, right? And still be able to say you're the largest crowd today if it's an afternoon game being played in the East Coast or something like that. Where it matters is what those seats are going to be, what they're going to be able to charge for the seats that remain, right? And 107 no chair back bleacher seats are not worth nearly as much as 102,000 seats that are a little more comfortable and can offer some amenities.
Okay, so 107 is Michigan. We all know that that's because they only give 12 inches, not 15 inches like Beaver Stadium gives.
Michigan people today.
106 is Beaver Stadium. So I'm wrong. Ohio Stadium, the Horseshoe, is 102.78. So you can lose 4,000 seats essentially, and still be Actually, a little less than 4,000. It'd still be clear. I feel like they're going to lose more than 4,000. Although you probably if you put more boxes in there, you could probably make it up. Or
I don't think that's what, what do I know? I don't think generally that's not what they care about. They care about how much you can sell the seats for, right? So if you have fewer, more valuable seats, that's what matters. That's what you're going to be able to do. And I mean, I guess I'd be surprised if they went under 100, but I wouldn't be shocked. And they're not going to go, they're not losing 10,000 seats, I don't think. But it'll be fun to watch.
I'm looking at the list. Do you know what the smallest stadium in America is? I do now.
For college football?
Yeah. I think this is for FBS.
Maybe
football.
32.
No, 26. It's Oregon State.
Really? Only 26.
Yeah.
Well, that was like Colorado was touting the sellout of 47. And I had to look, and I guess their capacity is 50. So they had a sellout for their spring game. So
yeah.
God bless them.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have more to chat about that once that all comes out. I just hope it doesn't look ugly either. Okay. Moving on. More rule changes. More things are changing. A lot of change today on the podcast. 3 rule changes rolled out this week. Hold on. And they're coming to college football. Running clock after first downs is coming, except for in the last 2 minutes. I think that's the one that probably people will pay attention to most to. Apparently banning the use of consecutive timeouts is going to save a lot of time. And then the fouls will carry over. So you would basically lose the untimed downs at the end of the first and third quarter, all of those hundreds of thousands of times that happens during a football game. Those second 2 are very laughable. Like I said, I think the first one is the biggest issue I have on this situation. I don't know. I don't think it's going to speed up that much.
I don't think so. I think offenses were already speeding the game because of the style of play in most cases. If you're really concerned about like those second 2 and the timeouts, take a timeout away from a coach each half. Just give them 2 to begin
or even
with.
In the first half.
Right. Like you only get 2 in the first half. I mean, there's sometimes just silliness because we're using them. And, they protect them, and then they've got them to use, and it does make the games longer. My challenge with the first downs thing is, you say you don't want to play a different game in overtime. You want to value all kinds of football. So why is it different only in the final 2 minutes? If it's really a good thing, I mean, I understand why, but it just doesn't make, and I don't feel like they're losing that much time there.
I guess the only thing that I thought about was like, it's a little bit of a trade-off because then you don't have the 2-minute warning. You don't have the 2-minute warning in the NFL, but you still have the running clock after a first down. Whereas this, you have kind of the opposite, the first down and no 2-minute warning. So I think I'm fine with that. I can live with that. But I don't know. I would hate to see them move to a running clock, like pretty much for the entire game, except for like within the last however many minutes of a half, which was talked about, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think ultimately, I think you got to get rid of commercials. They're not going to do that. Let's be realistic about that. So I think college football's kind of stuck.
What would you think of a soccer treatment toward commercials? Right? Like, and again, there's a lot more inventory to sell in college football than there is in soccer. But what if they said, hey, we're going to take away 2 breaks, but the second quarter and the third quarter are going to be presented with on-screen ads, from certain sponsors, right? So we're not going to have to break for commercial during those 2 quarters, but we're going to have we're going to have big bugs in the thing, or we're going to have moving ads. We're going to sell a different kind of inventory, because you could speed the game up that way, because you wouldn't take commercials, right? You would just play the game the right way with no commercial breaks, no time stoppages except timeouts, and let them find different inventory to sell during those times.
I guess, but I guess you're not. I don't think you're.
I don't know if you'd make it up monetarily. I was just curious about what it would look like.
Yeah, I don't know. My thought on it is like, the problem isn't with the rules. The problem is with the commercials, and so somebody so I guess maybe yes, or hell, give me the occasional on-field ad. Like, I am fine with it, even if it's CGI'd in. I'm fine with that. Or give me like a ESPN football presented by Scorebug, like it's a little bit more aggressive and like
Right.
has, as opposed to having the ESPN logo for this quarter, it has, you know, the Affleck logo for
Right.
this quarter.
Yeah, I didn't know if you'd be tied. 'Cause to me, those kind of opportunities exist where you wouldn't have to play with the game at all. You just find different
Yeah,
content
I would rather
power
you
market.
figure out that than do it this way. Like you're punishing the roles, you're punishing the game. I think a little
Yeah,
bit.
no, and I
Not,
think it's
and I say that because like I don't know. Like I guess there's also the balance of like you are supposedly preparing these people for the next level, and this is like closer to the timing rules of the next level. And NFL games are quick, like 30 minutes we're done, and or 3 hours we're done. Like it's pretty much 3 hours on the button every game. So maybe this will speed up things. I don't know.
I think,
We'll find out.
but there, when we'll talk about this summertime for the program, I think NFL stuff is, they know they're making it up for time, right? Commercials are if you get late in the game, the timeout is a 30-second timeout, right? Because we're behind. And if somebody's close to out of bounds, I'm not convinced that if you really, stop action to all those little segments when people are going out of bounds or stopping out of bounds, there's times they know they got to make time and they're keeping the clock running just to keep the show on time.
Yeah.
If they can help it.
Yeah, I feel like you notice that at the end of like a blowout more often than
Yes.
than not.
Yeah.
All right. There's one more rule change. Sorry. You sent me this one. The SEC is considering basically forcing teams to give up fans, or what was the headline on it? They're considering amplifying their uh rushing the field rules. Right now they have a pretty hefty fine. They want to look at maybe forcing people to forfeit wins, which is absolutely idiotic.
Or take away home games in the future.
Yeah, take away home games in the future. Like, what? Like, no one's going to go for this. Who in this room is going to agree to that? One. Number two, imagine, let's play it out where say Tennessee doesn't kind of fall off like they did, and then they still beat Alabama and everybody rushes the field, but they don't get into the playoff because they have a loss because it was a forfeit because their fans went on the field. Like, do we hear how asinine this line of thinking is?
Yeah, and I just don't. I understand, and maybe it was the person who wrote that article or some other article that said I stormed the field a couple times in my past, and people could jump when they jumped from the stands, they could get hurt, and EMTs couldn't get to them, perhaps because there's lots of people there. Okay, but and I know
you're assuming the risk.
Right, and I'm sure people can say, oh, there's these times players got pushed and this got that, and the coaches in the stand. It is, but for the most part, 90% of the time, it's joyous, happy people who want to enjoy a celebration. If you want to ban them and say, hey, look, we can solve this. If you're on the field and we catch you, you are going to get ticketed and fined as an individual. Doesn't have to hurt the program. That just seems silly. Like, it just seems like they're taking a sledgehammer to something they could solve another way.
Please don't be excited about your football team. That's right. That's what I hear here.
Okay, well, I think you can be excited and not go on the field, but I think there's also common sense too. Like, if it's, somebody you should beat, keep your butt off the field. If it's the first time in 30 years, then let them get on the field. Let's make it as safe as possible.
If I was like an evil athletic administrator, I would be like encouraging my fans after every game to get on the field in the SEC. Like please go on to the field. That would be my public address announcing. Okay.
Nice to tie that in. Wait, did we get the public address announcer's job in there too? That's great.
There we go. That's full circle. All right, real quickly, the NFL draft is Thursday, right? Thursday.
Saturday.
Are you excited, Steve?
I'll watch. I don't know if I'm excited, but I'll watch. It's always good drama. It's really good reality TV. It's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It's This Is Your Life. It's all that stuff rolled into one. So yeah, I'll pay attention.
Okay.
How about you?
Me too. No, yeah, I will be very tuned in. I'm not as excited as I normally am for the draft, even though Penn State might have like quite literally have 2 or 3 people go in the first round. Like, it's very possible. I am interested to see what the Steelers do. But other than that, there's not a lot of, I guess the Will Levis thing, like I am interested to see the top 3
Yeah.
picks and how the Will Levis thing shakes out. So other than that, that's
Yeah, that'll be surprising, huh? Like if he goes that high, I mean, he's gonna go that high. He's gonna go top 10 unless something's really crazy.
did you see the Peter King thing?
I did.
He,
He's not wrong.
God bless Peter King. He basically has asked the question that anybody in the Penn State community has basically said is, if Will Levis is so good, why didn't he beat Sean Clifford out for the job?
Right.
And if you watch and you do some math and read into it a little bit, who knows? We could be sitting here, be laughed at on this podcast because he ends up being a great quarterback. All the power to him, but I don't think he's gonna.
No, but he's gonna make some life-changing money later.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing. Like he's gonna do that. What he does with it, whether he becomes another quarterback and a great quarterback, an average quarterback, or Tony Mandarich and takes the money and walks away as a failed pick. We'll see, but that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. All right. This week's Old Guy Young Guy brought to you by Netflix. Steve is very upset about it.
But it is brought to you by Netflix. That's true. So I'm flipping channels. I'm scrolling through Netflix the other night. Was it last night? Last night, the night before, and they're telling you what they got going on. And they do a great job of here's a little graphic for the thing and like 3 little promotional things about it, 1980s movie or a crime drama or whatever else. And there was the Whitney Houston biopic or whatever it is. And one of the descriptors was period piece. And I just freaked me out a little bit because it was in the 1980s. And to me, period pieces are the 1880s or the 1500s. You can't have a period piece about a time that I lived through. So that I was a little freaked out by that.
So it's a new movie? It's like a newer movie that just came out, or it came out in the 80s?
Newer movie just came out. It was released in
Okay.
theaters in 2022, apparently.
Okay.
And is now on Netflix.
I tend to agree with you. That Netflix, not you.
Why? I know nobody agrees with me. This is one of the ones that people love.
So the first movie that comes to mind is like Purple Rain. And like I feel like that is not necessarily like I guess it's not really a period piece, but Superbad would also be another example of a period piece. Right. It's a comedy, but it's if you grew up in relatively that generation, these are things you had to deal with. Obviously, like that story probably happened back in Steve's day and also happens in my day and will happen to kids in the future. So yeah, I'm okay with that movie being called period piece. I think it's about a time frame of somebody's life, and that time frame was like Whitney Houston was a pretty big part of the 80s, right? Am I right here?
Sure, yeah, I think so. Like I think people probably knew her, whether they were fans or not. They knew her, and the national anthem still holds up as one of the supposed best national anthems ever. So
Steve doesn't think so, judging by that.
Oh comment. No. I don't really rate national anthems, so no, I'm not taking shots at Whitney Houston. No way. Smarter than that. No, and I'm wrong because I did reach out to one of the friends of the show, and the response was, if in painting the personality, the period is featured prominently, then it is indeed a period piece. So I guess I'm just got to understand that I grew up at a time that was 3+ decades ago. And for some people, that's a period piece.
I feel like, well, but I don't feel like period pieces have to be like, you can have a current period piece. I can't really think of one off the top of my head right now, but like
that makes for a strong example there.
Well, but like when Superbad came out, like that was relatively like, that was what this is like growing up in this generation.
Okay.
Here I am arguing for Superbad as a period piece. It's essentially what we are.
There we go. See, I win. So I'm right.
There we go.
No, I'm not right. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
All right.
Wow.
Did you watch the Whitney Houston movie? Was it good?
No. Okay. No. What did I watched?
What'd you watch?
The Diplomat. I'm now trying. Little Netflix series.
Is that is it a spy thing?
Yeah, it's kind of a spy thing with the woman who was in the
it looked like a Jack Ryan ripoff.
It looked more like a Madam Secretary ripoff.
Okay, then I think we're thinking of different things.
Okay, so yeah, it's I forget her name. Somebody will chime in.
Okay.
If one of our core 4 listeners is to this point, I will get a text saying that's who it is.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right.
No, I've been trying some baseball again this week. Games going shorter, like even games that aren't like the Pirates, because we don't get the Pirates on YouTube TV. Just some other games just to have some baseball as background noise.
Look at you. Proud of you. All right. Eventful podcast. I don't know when we will talk to you next, but we'll talk to you relatively soon. In the meantime, we have a blog, it's stuffsummersays.com. On that blog, there is a part called With
Steve,
there. Ooh, he was a little late on that trigger today. We have an email. It's podcast@stuffsummersays.com. I have an email. It's Darian@stuffsummersays.com. Steve has an email. It's
Steve@stuffsummersays.com.
I never really thought about like Stuff Summer Says is hard to say sometimes if you're trying to say it fast, and then you throw in Steve in there.
But if they email often enough, it'll be
Yeah.
automatically pop up on their email, so they won't
Yeah,
need to say it. They'll
that's
just
true.
type it.
No, it's just like it's a lot of alliteration. Email by Twitter handles. I have a Twitter handle. It's @StuffSummerSays. Steve's is
At Steve Samsel.
podcast email said that one. Thumbs up.
Subscribe down here
Subscribe
somewhere.
there. People have been watching. That is very impressive to me. Steve's cat just walked by.
We have a needy cat. We have a needy cat. Doesn't make the podcast yet, but she's got a needy cat. She needs some attention.
Steve, go hang out with the cat.
See ya.
Bye.